no matter that diagnosis, it is tough, but for as long as you're alive, which is what these stories show, there's still good living to do.
This is a special episode. We are talking with Michelle Hanton again. Today, we're talking about how she got the scary diagnosis of breast cancer 23 years ago. Then Michelle came across a movement that had been sparked by a trial conducted by Dr. Dawn McKenzie, a sports medicine specialist here at the University of British Columbia, UBC, Vancouver, Canada, in 1996. In this trial, those diagnosed with breast cancer were part of a group of dragon boat paddlers, and this trial was such a success, it was the beginning of a global movement, and Michelle went on to be the founder of Dragons Abreast Australia. Now, Michelle co-authored a book called Internationally Abreast, Exercise as Medicine, a story of hope and courage, together with her friend Eleanor Nielsen from Toronto, Canada. This is the inspiring story of the 25-year growth of what is today a worldwide movement and amazing story of hope and strength, where women started dragon boating groups even during lockdown as recent as 2020. I'm very honored to call Michelle my friend, and my hope is that whoever listens to this episode who was diagnosed or who has someone in their life that has been diagnosed with this insidious disease hears the positive message Michelle and the other dragon boaters want to spread. Welcome back to the podcast, Michelle. I'm so excited to talk about your new book here on my podcast.
Well, I'm excited to talk about it too, Connie, and it's wonderful to be here again as your guest. So thanks for the privilege.
Yeah, and you know what? It's almost to the day a year that you were on my podcast. It's kind of interesting.
Really?
Interesting detail. Yes, last year in October you were a guest, and now we are back in October 2021, and here Michelle shows up as a surprise.
Wow.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so we're talking about your book, and I don't want to take the story you want to tell around it away from you. I'll let you talk about that. But what I want to say real quick is I feel it's so interesting that it ties us together in a way because it has to do with Vancouver, BC, Canada, even though you're in Australia, which is on its own already kind of like interesting side story, no? And I think
Yes.
It started with that sports medicine specialist who kind of
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, had the idea. So, and then he created this worldwide movement out of it. So somehow, no. So I let you tell your side of the story a little bit, but I find that is very, very cool coincidence.
Yes, well, it's very karmic actually that it is in October because October is Breast Cancer Month globally, and everything's pink. It's also ovarian cancer awareness and a bunch of other things, but my focus is breast cancer because I'm a breast cancer survivor diagnosed 23 years ago. So, hey, I'm still here.
Scary diagnosis, no?
Yeah. So what happened as a result of that, I was quite young and everything was very negative in the media. Everything I read was about people dying, about people suing their doctors for not picking it up. And, there was really nothing. There was very little information at that time. We didn't have all the pinkness that is here today. So it was very scary and very lonely and very frightening. But I went to a conference, sort of long story short, and a breast cancer conference, the very first one in Australia for consumers. And one of the speakers, again, was from Canada. She was a Canadian journalist. Her name was Sharon Batt. And she said, in Canada, we even have breast cancer dragon boat teams. And she flashed up this slide on the PowerPoint presentation behind her. And there was the boat. And I always remember the name. It was Chemo Savvy, which, is a play on Chemo Savvy. Yeah. So Chemo Savvy. And that's the team from Winnipeg, which I didn't know at the time, of course, because, this was. But what happened was a light bulb went on for me. And I went, oh, my gosh, this is something so positive. And because in my business, I had been involved with the Dragon Boat in the sense that we'd provided the uniforms, we designed the uniforms for the team. So that inspired me to learn a little bit more about it for breast cancer survivors, because it was something positive in all the doom and gloom. So I discovered it was started in Vancouver as a clinical trial by Dr. Don McKenzie at UBC. So from that, what was supposed to have been a 6-month trial for these ladies in 1996, and the trial was to prove or disprove that upper body, when you have breast cancer, they remove the lymph nodes from your armpit. That was the standard treatment of the day. So your lymphatic system is compromised. What happened was they would say, go home, wrap yourself in the cotton wool. You can't carry a purse on the affected side. Be super careful, because you'll develop lymphedema, which is a very debilitating condition where you get the swelling of the extremities. So, all scary stuff. So Don McKenzie, he conducted this trial, and he proved that there were no adverse effects from this upper body exercise. He used the Dragon Boat as the vehicle because it was actually somewhere where you could get a good cohort together to study, literally all in the same boat. But the result of this study there were some really unexpected results, which were from the psychosocial level. And there was a social worker who was involved with the team, and she noticed, how positive everybody was and how there was that change in attitude from being scared and frightened and, lost, to getting in the team. And at the end of the trial, they had such a great time. They basically said, hello, we're not going away. This is going to continue. And that team is called Abreast in a Boat. They are in Vancouver today. They have grown bigger and bigger. And one of the things they did was their mission was to spread the word that there's a lot of good living to do despite breast cancer. And it became their mission.
How inspiring, instead of all this doom and gloom. And again, I think like maybe back then we really didn't, or a lot of the, especially school medicine, didn't want to hear how much our way of thinking and looking at things from a mental level has to do with our recovery, even though they back then already had like the placebo effect and all that. I believe they were talking about that already in 96, and still it was not so much maybe recognized, no? And then this is so awesome. Then Dr. Don McKenzie came up with this study, and he actually didn't want to prove the mental aspect. He wanted to prove that you can do physical exercise even as a breast cancer survivor or somebody that had surgery. And that is the side effect that came out of it. That's awesome, right?
Absolutely. There were so many positives that came out of it. And, Don has been involved with the Canadian Olympic Committee with canoeing for many years. So to him, that combination of his medical background, his connection with the canoeing at Olympic level, he realized when he heard those stories that this doesn't sit right, because he recommended for one of his patients that she should do this kind of exercise. And she'd said, oh, I can't. And he said, why not? She said, because I've had breast cancer. And so that was the catalyst. And he went, hang on a minute. And the result from that one moment he had thinking that can't be right, has sparked this global movement that 25 years later, there are women and a few men all across the globe, you know, from Vancouver to Dubai to Fiji to everywhere. And Australia and Canada have a very close relationship because people say we are similar in culture and, you know, the countries, they're vast and etc. But also from the breast cancer dragon boating perspective, we have a very close connection, which goes back to a breast in a boat again, to spread their message. They had someone designated as the global liaison officer, and her name was Sandy Smith, and I'm blessed to have called her my friend. And what she did was she would correspond. Anybody that wanted to know anything, you would write to a breast in a boat, and back would come responses from Sandy saying, this is how you do it, this is that. She sent us copies of the medical publications that we could use to kind of convince people, because it was very difficult to convince women to go against what their doctors were saying. Which is understandable. And especially if you have then so much fear already put into yourself, and then doing actually something that goes against what the doctor recommends must be very scary. Absolutely. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is that in some cultures, and it was the same in our culture, you know, back when I was diagnosed, back when A Breast in a Boat started, a lot of society didn't talk about it. There was some kind of stigma almost associated with it, and people didn't feel comfortable sharing. And yet, when you look at the statistics, there are so many. And once you start to open up and you talk about it, people go, yes, that's me. And, you know, my mother, my sister. And there's some, you know, a great story in the book about when A Breast in a Boat went to New Zealand for the first time. And they visited one of their sponsors, Collier's, and said, you know, thank you for supporting us. The manager there was surprised, and he said he couldn't understand why they'd gone to New Zealand, because they didn't have breast cancer in New Zealand, which was crazy, you know. That was what he thought at the time. And yet the next day, and again, this is in the book, two of the guys from the Collier's office went down to the race site, unbeknownst to each other, and then both kind of confessed to the team there and to each other that one's mother had breast cancer, one's sister had breast cancer. So, you know, it was that unspoken. So the benefit, I suppose, is that it really has opened the floodgates of conversation as well, and helping to normalize.
Oh, no wonder they felt also so alone when it was even hush everything. And I mean, oh my God. Yeah. So what, I have so many questions. I get my brain around it. So how did that change your life? That like not the diagnosis, but more like finding the dragon boating and that whole organization?
Okay, so it changed, like the diagnosis obviously changed my life enormously, because you come face to face with your own mortality, and that's a whole other conversation. But we didn't have dragon boat for breast cancer survivors in Australia, so I was determined to make it happen, and it took 2 years to get 20 women together, to get the movement going. We had to recruit from Australia wide, so our model is a bit different. They came from all over Australia rather than from one town or city. And what that has actually proven, you know, with hindsight, is that everybody had that same spirit, that they wanted to try something new, that they were prepared to fly in the face of conventional wisdom. And just like those originals back in Vancouver, those originals in Australia, because they came from all over the country and got together in 2000, it sparked startups in different parts of this country and got the ball rolling with conversations. And, you know, the National Breast Cancer Foundation and the Breast Cancer Network at the time would use the dragon boaters, basically became almost like the face of breast cancer, because we were out there. And it's the same around the world. You know, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in Israel, wherever you might be, these women, they're on the water, they're in the pink, and you can see them living and laughing and having a good time. And that really personalizes those statistics that you're reading about. And it helps, I think, take a little bit of the fear away. Because you look and you go, oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it. You know, if they can survive when you're first diagnosed, you're looking for somebody who's survived a year, 2 years, 5 years. Then you find somebody who's survived 7, 10 years. You go, oh, wow, that's really good. It gives you hope.
Yeah, it gives you hope, and it shows that you're not alone. No, so it's like that. I feel like that is a big one too. It's like I could just imagine when you feel like, oh, I'm the only one that has this. Why am I the one that has this? Not realizing that other people suffer the same or have the same diagnosis and are just as lonely and just as confused and just as scared. And everybody thinks they're all by themselves. And when I think that's when you can see somebody out there, you can understand, even if you don't know them personally, you can understand, oh, okay, I'm not alone. I think that most likely gives a lot of hope as well.
Yeah. And a lot of the support groups, sometimes people are, they're sitting around in a room, they're chatting or they're having coffee and tea and whatever. And it can be quite doom and gloom. When they come into the dragon boat, you're out there, you're on the water, whether it's hot or cold weather, whatever, you're alive because you're in the elements.
Yes.
And your brain is focused on, how do I hold the paddle and keep in time and all those other things. You don't have time. As one of the women said, you kind of leave your troubles and your worries on the shore while you go out. And that's a big part of the recovery and the healing process, etc.
Yeah. And I love the symbolism of it, like the dragon. Like the dragon is something very, he's not just sitting here and making himself small. A dragon, what all I kind of see when I see a dragon is like he's going in there and he's kind of like wah and roaring and okay, I'm giving my all, and so that the symbolism is really beautiful too. So now, but this is now a long time ago, and now you decided to write a book. So, and you co-authored the book, as far as I understand. So we don't want to leave your friend out of this story.
Absolutely not.
Why did you write the book, or why did you two ladies write the book? And talk a little bit about her as well, like how she fits into your whole story.
Okay, so I co-authored this with Eleanor Nielsen from Dragons Abreast Toronto. So she's the founder of the movement there. And Eleanor and I first met in 2001 when I visited Toronto, and we've encountered and bumped into each other over many years. We walked the Camino together and a bunch of other stuff. And what we noticed is that a lot of the history is becoming lost because it's many years now since it all started. And we both felt, having been blessed to be survivors and still here, that it was important to record the history because that's what influences our future and documents it. And we felt that people coming into dragon boating for survivors should be aware of it, because if someone doesn't pass it on, that it disappears and it's there and people take for granted what is there. And someone said, is it still valid today as it was 25 years ago? And the answer to that, we weren't sure about what that answer was. So we went out and we asked some of the newer paddlers that had come in, and the answer is yes, it's as valid today as it was 25 years ago. And there's the story of a group in Bucharest in Romania. They actually started during lockdown.
Oh, wow.
To put a team together because the woman there had heard about dragon boating for survivors, and she was determined to make it happen despite the lockdown. And I think the testament to that is how many women were keen, because obviously they felt something was missing in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's super powerful. And that was as recently as
last year.
2000. She was diagnosed in 2013, but it was in 2020 that they called immunist dragons were launched, say, during full lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's still absolutely relevant. And one of the ladies there says, she said, when I started to train, I was feeling alone, not understood by anyone, useless. Now being a part of this amazing group and feeling like someone who helps build this team, I feel like I have grown wings to fly.
Oh, wow.
And those are the things that we knew, that Eleanor and I knew anecdotally. So to write the book was to bring all of that on paper, put it down, to share with people who are newly diagnosed, because when you're first diagnosed, you hunt around for all the positivity and your family and your friends and everybody else. That's because this isn't on your radar until it happens to you. So we believe that when you can pick up a book like this, that is full of true historical facts, poems, and quotes from women who have walked in that path.
Yeah, I've so powerful. I'm so glad you decided, and from how I know you, who else could have made it happen? It's you. So of course, now that 96, that is actually, interestingly, the first time I came to Canada. So another coincidence in here. But so since 96, and then you, I think, came across this a little bit later, but it's many years. So how, and many years, many stories, many chapters. I don't know whether you guys call yourself chapters or not, but many different locations. How did you decide what you include and what to exclude in the book? Because I could imagine you could have written an encyclopedia, no?
That is an excellent question. So what we decided was, this is about history. So that was the question we asked. Is this relevant to what happens globally, the global history, or is it more relevant to something local? Is it significant at a local level or a country level? And that was how we decided. And because now there are hundreds of teams around the world, we chose to tell the story of how it began. So there's a lot about those founding teams. And in the countries where some of them were starting very much simultaneously, we included the first two teams. So we have Vancouver and Toronto. And in the US, we have Pink Phoenix, which is in Portland, Oregon. And then on the other side of the country in Buffalo, New York, is Hope Chest. So we included a bit about both of them. And there are countries like Malaysia, like Taiwan, like the Philippines, that we only have a tiny little bit about, but because we weren't able to get any more information from them, but we do know they have something happening. So we thought we need to write that down so people can go back and, maybe in another 20 years and say, you know what, there was the foundation of something happening in that country at this time.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky because like Israel, for instance, that's a good example. I spoke to Mike Haslam, who is the founder of the International Dragon Boat Federation. And I said to him, how long has Israel been saying they've been interested. And so he gave me the year that the inquiries first started in Israel, but it actually took a group of women from Canada to buy dragon boats for Israel, Jewish Canadian women. They bought the dragon boats for Israel. They went across with trainers from Canada, and they organized the training and the festival. And at that festival, a number of breast cancer survivor teams attended. And that sparked the growth of the movement in Israel. So it's beautiful. Really interesting, how powerful the breast cancer movement has been in influencing starts in different countries around the world. And I would say that's because of the sheer nature of the media worthiness, because it's unusual, not in Australia and Canada now, but in these other countries, it's highly unusual where they're starting off, and there's the women with breast cancer speaking up, getting in a dragon boat. And from that have come other, sports clubs.
Yeah, so it's not the restricted kind of thing to the dragon boats now. Yeah, okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah. Because I saw you were basically, the book is also kind of saying like exercise as medicine, no? So this is like, and I'm sure like not everybody who is really sick can just exercise and then get healthy. But from what I'm hearing is just that being part of something, having an escape with your brain too, to go do something different is medicine for what, maybe even for whatever condition you have, but you guys figured it out for breast cancer.
Yes, I think, and there's a lot of studies now, and in many places, actually in Vancouver, Don McKenzie has a cancer gym. So, and this was in the early days, he was saying, this is what I want to see. You get diagnosed with breast cancer, you get sent to the oncologist, you get sent, for your radiotherapy, your chemotherapy. You should also be having your sessions, with the gym organized. And he's got that happening in Vancouver, because it actually shows that people who are able to do some, obviously supervised program, do really well, despite, having those dreadful treatments. It actually helps them.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from whatever's like chemotherapy or radiation or whatever else you need. It's more like this is just something also to focus on. I'm trying to remember how that documentary was called that I watched, and it was also about here in Vancouver, where they actually were saying like if you change your eating habits and when you eat differently, and there was a lady featured in there, and she had breast cancer, and she would go with her bicycle along the water line and everything. And they were talking about it, that it's so important to get your brain away from it, to get some additional, again, like medicine or additional support, like whether it's nutritional or exercise or mental and emotional support, besides all the school medicine and the treatments that you're going through. And I think, and just thinking about it, for me, I would think like, again, the dragon boating, the symbolic of it, I love so much. No, it's like this, okay, we're not just sitting here and letting this doom and gloom shower over us. We're actually becoming dragons, and
that's right.
Dragon boating. Yeah. So what do you think, who needs to read the book? So is there do you have somebody special in mind who really, really needs to read the book?
So we have a couple of different audiences, but I think the person who really, really needs to read this book is somebody who is newly diagnosed, or somebody who was diagnosed some years ago and is still feeling lost and alone and afraid, or even somebody who's been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, because in the book, there are some amazing stories of women, living with advanced breast cancer. And that's the key word. They're living with, they're not dying of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's all about living.
Yeah.
So if you are just starting on this journey, or if you've got a family member and you're not sure what to expect in terms of what can their life be afterwards, this will give you that hope and that inspiration. And depending on where in the world you are, there is probably a team not too far away. And if there isn't a team, there's probably a Dragon Boat club. And if there isn't a club, like in the book, there's stories of, in Austria, how Svenja she got one started. There wasn't one there. In Qatar, there wasn't one there. In Doha, there wasn't one there. So in Italy, there wasn't one. And in France, there weren't. But it was the women that got them happening, because they got inspired and they made it happen. So it's like one of the Swedish ladies says, it gives you something to focus your attention on and to enjoy, and that your family and your supporters can also become involved with, because they're a very important part of this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And something positive to focus on, instead of just having this black cloud that is hanging over you, just focusing on that, trying to focus on something that pulls you more towards positivity, and which probably makes you stronger to then, and I think like makes your immune system probably stronger too, so you can handle the treatments better. And so
it gives you purpose and something to aim for. Like Tricia Nelson, who started the movement in New Zealand, she was at home. She'd just been going through her treatment, and she saw A Breast in a Boat on the television in Wellington. And she said, I'm going to do that once I've finished my treatment. And she made it happen in New Zealand. And then, was her determination, even though people said no, her story of how she made it happen and who she roped in. And it's amazing. It just takes one person with a bit of determination and passion, I guess. And, when you want something positive for yourself, you just go, don't tell me no, I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah. So when I listen to you talking, I'm thinking almost like it doesn't matter, maybe even with what you're diagnosed, you can still read the book and get so much inspiration and hope out of it, because you read about stories of women who did something with it. And then maybe you're not diagnosed with breast cancer, but with some other scary health issue, and you could take the ideas and the concepts and say, oh, wait a second, if these ladies can do it, then maybe I can do something inspiring.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, do you think you need to get something else off your chest? Is there anything we didn't talk about that you feel like this needs to be said too?
I think the key thing that needs to be said is, no matter what the diagnosis, where there is life, there is hope. And medical treatments continue to change. There are new drugs, there are new things coming to market all the time. So no matter that diagnosis, it is tough, but for as long as you're alive, which is what these stories show, there's still good living to do. So keep that message front of mind. And if you need to have a pity party, that's okay. That's perfectly normal. It isn't all plain sailing. But when you surround yourself with people that have been through the same kind of thing, they will help you through it. So always reach out for support.
Beautiful words, Michelle. Beautiful words. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast again, sharing this amazing story. Cancer was in my family, so I have not myself, but I have a lot of respect from this disease, and it sounds so beautiful, your book. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. It's been my privilege to share. Thank you.
Thank you.